I was about 16 at the time, and I am half indigenous. I was visiting my uncle on my mom's side, the indigenous side, at his cabin located in the woods of northwestern Maine, because I was driving my grandpa up to visit them for the fall season. The cabin was rather small and could only accommodate my uncle, auntie, and grandpa, so I was told to sleep in the camper that was set back further into the woods. That evening went by as usual. Auntie made dinner, and we all laughed and shared stories and eventually turned in for the night. I took a flashlight and started my way out to the camper. About halfway down, I shut off the flashlight and looked up to admire the night sky. It was at this point I noticed how quiet the forest had become. There were no birds or sounds of crickets or rustling leaves, just pure silence. I suddenly got this intense feeling of dread deep within my gut, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. The voice in my head told me to bolt to the camper as fast as I could. For some reason, my instincts told me I didn't belong there, and something was watching me. When I made it to the camper, I slammed the door shut and double-locked it, closing the window blinds. I swear, I could hear my heart pounding in my ears as I laughed at myself for getting so worked up over nothing. The entire night, I was restless in my sleep. I couldn't help but hear footsteps and movement all around the camper. I told myself it was just curious animals and grazing deer, but my dreams were haunted by something I couldn't see. Unfortunately, this would not be my final experience of the weekend. By morning, all seemed normal. I thought about mentioning what had happened to my grandfather over breakfast, but I was worried that he would brush me off as being overdramatic or being too used to the city life. I let the odd night slide off my mind as I enjoyed the day with my family and their big shepherd Frank. Just to calm my nerves, I asked for Frank to accompany me in the camper that evening to ensure I felt safe. The walk back was once again fine until I began to enter the tree line. I'm not sure if it was because I was feeling nervous as well, but Frank seemed to be on edge with his ears perked and head on a swivel. That night, he slept in the bed of the trailer with me. I felt safer with the dog there. However, I had an extremely awful dream in which, when I awoke, Frank was staring at the wall of the trailer with his hackles standing on end. When the morning hit, I packed my bags to leave in the afternoon and brought Frank out of the trailer and lead him out to the small field between the cabin and the thick woods. I was kicking his ball for him to excitedly chase, grab, and return to me. We continued this game until I kicked the ball a bit too hard and it rolled right down to the edge of the woods. Frank raced down to grab the ball until his full sprint turned into a full stop. Digging his paws into the dirt, meters past where the ball had landed. He was standing stiff, fur on end, ears pinned back and unmoving. I called for him to come, which he always responded to, but he didn't even acknowledge me. I began to walk down to where he was, calling his name a little bit louder still, with no response. I grabbed him by the collar, getting kind of worried at this point as his eyes stared directly into the trees. I yelled his name loudly, giving him a little tug. The forest was silent. Moments later, the silence was broken by an echo of my voice yelling back. However, this echo was delayed and distorted. It sounded like me, but also not like me. I froze and looked into the dark woods, holding my breath, only for another scream to come from the woods in my voice. I immediately turned and booked it back to the cabin. I came to my auntie crying and trying to tell her that there was something out there in those woods. She comforted me, and told me it must have been nothing, but she seemed as if that was not the answer she wanted to give. My family is rather superstitious, especially me, and I'm guessing she didn't want me to overthink anything. I left that afternoon, and I have not been back since that weekend. This was one of the most creepy, traumatizing things that has ever happened to me. I was staying with my family, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, in an A-frame, chalet-styled cabin in northern Washington. Washington has a lot of forests and densely wooded areas. This cabin was also on a lake, and we brought our small lake boat with us. This trip was mostly so we could try out our new boat. Everything was going well. We were having fun on the lake, hanging out with family, and just generally having a good vacation. My family decided to go to a convenience store and leave me alone in the cabin. This happened a while ago, but I was old enough to stay home alone. The nearest convenience store was about 45 minutes down a dirt road. As you may have expected, this is where it started to go wrong. They leave. I volunteered to stay home because I'm relaxing and don't want to have to get in a car. About 15 minutes after they leave, it started to get dark. I am walking around listening to music and enjoying the sunset perfectly framed over the lake. Chalets generally have pretty large windows, and this specific cabin did not have curtains. This made watching the sunset pretty enjoyable, but did not help once the sun fully set. Washington is known for its forests and is also known for Bigfoot. This story is not related to Bigfoot, as it is just a legend. I am just pointing that out for reference. So at this point, I am messing around and exploring the cabin more because the sun is now set and there isn't really much besides dark, kind of creepy forest and the lake outside of the window. As I am messing around, something catches my eye. I swore I could have saw very slight movement down by the small boat dock, about 125 meters down a small windy hill. I didn't really think much of it as I was in the forest, and there are many animals that could have been moving around. Deer, moose. At this point, I have forgotten about the movement I saw and head to the bathroom, which is down a hallway away from the window. While I was in the bathroom, I just got this terrible feeling, like something was wrong. I wanted to go check to see if there was anything inside the cabin or anything outside. I couldn't do this, however, because I was, using the bathroom. The longer I stayed in the bathroom, the worse the feeling got. Every drop of rain landing on the roof felt like the tick of a clock counting down to the end of the world. I quickly finished up in the restroom and practically sprinted down the hall. I looked out the large set of windows and saw nothing but the lifeless forest and the moonlight reflecting off of the lake. I then start to feel that stereotypical feeling of being watched. Generally, nothing even is watching you, or so you think. This time, there was something watching me. I turned around and looked down the hall at the other clear glass door at the end of the hallway. Standing on the other side of that door is a freaking deer, standing on two legs. My mind instantly screams, "Skinwalker!" I try not to acknowledge it. I close my eyes and sprint back to the bathroom, locking myself in the bathroom as it is the only room without windows. I sit there in silence, barely breathing for what felt like 12 years. My family finally got back, and I came out of the bathroom. Nothing was there. And after checking the next morning, there were no signs anything ever had been there. You can choose whether to believe me or not. You can choose whether to believe that it was all in my head. But even if it was all in my head, it still truly was a scary experience. My parents are very adventurous, and every year they take me and my sister on a 3-day trip. I was 14 at the time, so I loved doing things like this. 2 years ago, we went hiking and camping in our tent. But last year, they wanted to go to a cabin which was located in the woods. There were a few trails we had to take which would lead us to the cabin. They wanted to park at the bottom and then hike up. The hike would take around 3 hours. Me and my sister Mia loved this, as hiking in the middle of nowhere was peaceful and relaxing. It got us away from the city around us. We started our hike early. It was around 8 in the morning. Bear in mind, it took us 2 hours to get to the car park. I also didn't sleep well the night prior, so by this point, I was already feeling tired. We all had a bag, each full of essentials, the usual food, water, and some clothes. The cabin had food and drink, so we didn't need to bring much. My mom wanted to guide us, using her map, as Dad always does it. Things seemed to be going good as expected, but that was until we thought we arrived at the cabin. We didn't. We were surrounded by tall trees. I had a horrible feeling in my stomach that something wasn't right. We were lost. I knew it wasn't a good idea, my mom guiding us. Yes, she's done it before, but Dad usually does it. Anyway, Dad took over the map and had realized she missed a turning. He said we were an hour away from the cabin. Dad led the way and got us there safely. Leading up to the cabin was a small cobblestone path. The cabin was surrounded by bushes and trees. When we walked up to it, I had this weird, eerie feeling race through my body. My body was warning me this place wasn't right. Mia asked me what was wrong. I just said, I have a weird feeling about this place. It seems a bit creepy, she replied. Mom called us in and the cabin was gross. It was old, dusty, and looked like it hadn't been used in a decade. We was only staying for a few nights, so I didn't pack much clothes, and plus we had planned to explore the area so they would get dirty anyway. I picked a bedroom and tried settling in. I began unpacking my things to make it feel more homey. There was a big window in my room, overlooking the forest. I stood, staring outside for a few minutes, taking in the beauty of nature. My breathing became heavy as I noticed someone standing in the distance. I'd say maybe 50 feet from the cabin. I ran downstairs to my mom and Dad. Dad rushed outside to see what was going on. My dad came back inside and told me I wasn't funny and to stop playing tricks. I was confused. I reassured him that I saw someone, and he just said there wasn't anyone out there. The day passed by, and it was now the next day. The sun was beaming. My mom and dad wanted to sunbathe for a bit and then go on a small family hike in the evening. Me and Mia decided to venture around the area, and we stumbled across a small lake 10 minutes from the cabin. I was sweating from the heat, so without hesitation, I jumped in. Mia followed behind me. We spent roughly an hour in the lake, playing and laughing. We decided to stop with all the splashing and take in the peacefulness around us. The only thing we could hear was bushes and birds. It was so relaxing. I thought to myself, it was best we get out, as Mom and Dad could be worried. I looked over at Mia, and she looked pale, her hands shaking. She pointed to the side of the lake. There was a man watching us. He looked exactly like the same man I saw standing outside our cabin. I grabbed Mia, and we ran back to the cabin, screaming through the woods, hoping our parents would hear. Our mom and dad shouted for us, and we ran into their arms. We explained how we saw a man watching us, and it appeared to be the same man as yesterday. We all went back into the cabin, and my dad kept looking out all night to make sure no one was there. We had some dinner and went to bed. Me and Mia made little beds on the floor next to our parents as we were too scared to sleep alone. It took me ages to settle as I couldn't shake my fear. It was now midnight, and my mouth was getting dry. I was so dumb and didn't bring a drink up with me. I was really scared to go downstairs, but I needed to. I tried waking Mia so she could come with me, but she was sound asleep. I sucked it up and went downstairs. I slowly crept my way around the cabin and made myself a glass of juice. Walking back up the stairs, I passed the window on the lounge area. I couldn't miss it. The man was standing outside the window, staring inside. I ran up the stairs, screaming for my parents. My dad went rushing down, and he said the man had run away. He did not want to go after him, as you never know where he could lead him or what he could do to him. We packed our bags and left instantly. There was no way we were staying there a second longer. I have never been so terrified in my life. It was a trip from hell. I worry what would have happened if we stayed there, or if I had never went downstairs to get a drink.